Hey everyone, I had a really important question come up in my Facebook community group earlier today, and I just wanted to kind of go over it because I think it's really important for everyone. The question the client came up with was essentially that she's struggling a little bit with burnout, mainly from kind of lots of work going on, lots of social events, and she felt like she was starting to drift more towards or back into kind of some poor habits, and that would be inconclusive to her kind of maintaining those fantastic habits that she had ingrained over a period of coaching. So I just want to kind of recap first of all and say that willpower is, a small bucket. We can't always rely on willpower. Our priorities will change over time as well. So, you'll go through periods where certain things are very high priority and then certain periods where they're very low on the priority list. And that is just all part of life. So those two things are really important to remember. And that's why I always talk about habits and behaviors, because if we can get our habits and behaviors down and really ingrain them, then they're essentially what we fall back on. So first thing for this client to recognize is essentially priorities and kind of establishing what your priorities are at a certain point in time. So a prime example, and I'm going to use myself here, is I'm through in a kind of nice patch where work is quite steady. So it means that I can really kind of prioritize some other things going on, such as my gym workouts. And the important thing around kind of priorities is always to kind of list essentially what your number one priorities are. So for example, currently for me, it's making sure my food is on point, making sure my training is on point, making sure I spend enough time with friends and family for social well-being, and also making sure that I get enough sleep and I give myself enough self-care. So these are kind of like my list of 5 things that are my biggest priorities, and I've set up some great habits and behaviors to ensure these things occur. But a great example of this is in about a month's time, I'm about to start a rowing internship where all my afternoons will be taken up. So work will start to compound or become a kind of move up that priority list essentially. So it'll move into that top 5 because I won't have as much time available to myself because I'll lose all of my afternoons working. So I know that that's going to pump up a little bit more stress or pump up a little bit more pressure around my timings. And that's absolutely fine. I understand and know that and want to take that challenge. The only thing I need to do is make sure that I'm aware of that stressor. So we only have a bucket, the size essentially of what we can manage. And if we keep filling it up, it's going to overflow at some point. So I know that by throwing in this internship, I'm all of a sudden going to throw in quite a lot more work than I would normally. So that bucket, if I didn't change anything, that bucket would be very, very full and probably starting to, within a few weeks of doing that internship, start to kind of flow out. So what I need to do is recognize that early and change something within that bucket in order to bring that down a little bit on my priority list, and therefore manage the fact that work's going to be pumped up that list. And the way I'm going to do that is through my training. So I know that, for the internship is going to run from basically the kind of Easter right through to the end of summer. So I know that that's like a set period of time, and I can basically go, all right, I'm going to accept that I may not make any training gains through that time, but if I can basically maintain, then that will be perfectly acceptable, and therefore I can prioritize my training once again post that internship when my work starts to not be so high on that priority list. So essentially basically what I do is just reduce my amount of training sessions, reduce my load to a point where I can manage it, and therefore that brings that training stressor down, and work stress obviously takes that added proportion that was there through training. So basically what I'm trying to say is it all does come back to what your priorities are, and it's really important to know them straight away, be able to write them down, know that at certain periods these are going to change. So for example, if a family member gets sick, for example, obviously that means that you're going to need to prioritize family a lot more for a certain period of time, and therefore you need to manage the other priorities that you have, or the other stresses that you have, to make sure that that bucket doesn't overflow. So always know your priorities, always know where they lie, and always be or have the ability to adapt them depending on what stresses or where they lie on that priority list at that certain period of time. That's really crucial.